Now, of course, it's been a tough couple of weeks for President Cyril Ramaphosa. In fact, this week has been even tougher. He's been fighting from all angles. Now, as we've discussed, he's being investigated for claims that he covered up a robbery on his private farm.
Well, there are also calls for the central bank and SARS to investigate foreign currency on his property. Then he struggled twice to address Parliament as the EFF disrupted proceedings. So let's discuss the president's woes now with political analyst Professor Lesiba Teffo. Professor Teffo, thank you so much for your time this morning. A very good morning to you. What has transpired in Parliament? I think that even with the EFF unequivocally saying that they will not allow for Parliament to be, at least if they can control it, for Parliament to be addressed by an individual that has got a pending case against him. As you're taking a look and a gander of the political sphere right now, also leading to the National Elective Congress of the ANC later on in the year, would you say that the president at this moment in time is between a rock and a hard place and possibly an erupting volcano?
At the beginning of your question, the role of the EFF in all this, I find it extremely regrettable indeed. We live in an extremely violent society, a morally fractured society. And if you look at the theatrics of the EFF in Parliament, and you say, by the by, these are elders and leaders who should be exemplary in their conduct. But worst of it all is that in that hallowed building, they behave in the manner they do. They might be having good points to make, but it's about time they revisit the modus operandus, the how part of conveying their message. I have no doubt is doing a serious damage to the brand EFF. There was a little bit of promise at one stage when they started, but they are no longer good for themselves.
What about brand Cyril Ramaphosa, Prof? Yeah, I also want to look at, you're absolutely right with brand EFF, that they've got a significant role to play. Central to this is also brand Cyril Ramaphosa, who's also the president of the Republic of this country.
Oh yes. Look, Dr. Ramaphosa did fairly well, and there was a lot of hope and promise when he started. And I give him credit for having stemmed the tide of corruption. Unfortunately, before the god of money, his legs or bones also became jelly-like many African leaders. He's a fairly well-endowed man, and certain things that he often gets caught up in are really unfortunate. And given where he is right now, just going straight to the possible question you are likely to ask, yes, Ramaphosa will prevail, right? He will sail through this. He certainly will also prevail at the national conference at the end of the year. I'm saying this because I'm an African and I live in an African space. My existential experience tells me human beings across the globe follow power wherever it goes. But when it comes to Africans, they tend to look at their own interests prior to the interest of the subjects that they purport to act on their behalf. So I can't see Ramaphosa being ditched by the ANC. Neither do I think the DA will vote against him whenever it comes to when push comes to shove. If there is a motion of no confidence, the DA would rather at least not vote, abstain, rather than to push him out. Yeah. So you will still prevail on the numerical strength and the politics in Parliament. And indeed, some would say, if not him, then who?
Professor, I want to go back to the point of brand EFF and you saying that these people are leaders, that should be exemplary to the country. They should be exemplary to their very own colleagues, especially when you're sitting, in Parliament and you are being addressed by the first citizen of this country. And you're saying they need to find different MO. They need to find a different method because the one that they are using, that they've been using since they, came onto the scene has not been working. But then they could say to you that how else are we going to get the attention of the president? How else are we going to hold the president accountable? Because speaking, amicably and being at peace in that house has not worked. So let's cause a riot. Let's cause, a scene so that people can actually really understand, our language, understand our frustrations, understand the frustrations of the South Africans who do not have the power to sit in this house like we do?
The power of logic is the one that we should try to nurture, hold dear, more than the power of the sword. We have strong institutions in South Africa that are being increasingly weakened. The EFF don't need my advice. They know exactly what to do. There are institutions that can help them address the issues that they have. There are other ways to get the message across. But this strategy, one day they will look back and say, we didn't listen. Look at where we are. The brand is taking a serious knock. You may be fooled by the numbers you see now, but in terms of substance, the quality and the caliber of the people that wear those red T-shirts are not that I put a high premium on. And there was hope that the middle class could come on board. But, and again, even the rhetoric, the anti-white rhetoric is very, very, very alienating to the red beret.
You know, Prof, as you're speaking about this, you know, looking at the role of the opposition, and many would say that the opposition, if they know for a fact that, you know, it's going to be difficult to amass absolute power, they can only oppose. In this instance, when we're forecasting to 2024 now, right, all of this is unfolding, in front of the South African public. It is unfolding in front of a new electorate who would seek to put or see change in South Africa. Those are the young people. It is happening in front of the older generation, which still holds some kind of allegiance, especially from a liberation movement perspective, to the African National Congress, but also to those that are trying to find a political home. Looking at 2024, the unfolding of events, brand President Cyril Ramaphosa as the African National Congress president, and looking at also the other political parties at play, what can we actually look forward to anticipate? Are South Africans, as they're paying mind to what's happening in Parliament, the role of oppositions in that regard, as well as the African National Congress, is the electorate going, actually, hang on a second here, I don't know if I'm buying this political discourse in this country. What can we see for 2024 as this all unfolds?
A layered question, but let's start with President Ramaphosa. It has taken a serious knock. But I think they would rather keep him limping up to the 2024 elections. It is only at that time when they realize that he has become such a liability that they are certainly going to lose the elections, that they would be ready to ditch him, as they did with Jacob Zuma. It is more about the self than the other. Let's leave it there. But for now, I say I don't see any reason. With all the challenges he's facing, he's still their best bet. But the second one is the opposition. The opposition that I have in South Africa is so fractured, so splintered, so divided, and without any focus when it comes to really what are the basic principles and values that they want to uphold, that they cannot coalesce around and form a formidable force and take on this limping giant called the ANC. Because again, they are self-serving. In a small country like us, you have over 300 registered political parties. A small country like this one, that's why. Now let's come back to the electorate, which is your third part, the third part. The ANC is not a problem. The problem is the electorate, the people of South Africa. They keep saying to the ANC, give us more of the same. When you embrace a traitor, a thief, a charlatan, and later on you want to claim that you are a victim, no, you are not. You are an accomplice. The people of South Africa must begin to imagine life without the ANC, or with a revamped, renewed, and morphed ANC. But the current one, if they want it, it is up to them. But there is life without the ANC. We have seen it in Midvaal. We have seen it in the Western Cape. And I say, those who say it is too big to fail, they are not encouraging their followers to accept defeat should that day come, and it's quickly coming. I can see at least that dawn already.
Sure.
Professor Lesiba Teffo, thank you so much for those, I think, powerful points. Faith. You know, that is political analyst Professor Lesiba Teffo. And, you know, just to his final point where he says, those who think the ANC will still be there, Jesus is coming. Because one former party leader once said, the ANC will cease to rule in this country the day Jesus comes. So Professor Teffo is saying, Morena Watla.